going to unbox Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe Edition. This is a new title from GMT Games. I want to thank them for sending this to me. This is based on the Great Battles of History design, which has several titles in it. A game design from Mark Herman and the late Richard Berg. This is a deluxe edition that combines two previous Great Battles of History games that were dedicated to Julius Caesar's battles. And those would include, if you look at the back of the box here, Caesar's Gallic Wars and Caesar's Civil Wars. So I actually have the Gaul, they're calling it the Caesar's Gallic Wars, but it was Caesar versus Gaul, I believe it was what it was called. And they took several battles from that, and then they took there was another edition talking about the Civil War that, and they took several battles from that, and they've added some other battles in here and combined it into one deluxe box, which is somewhat reminiscent of when they came out with Great Battles of Alexander, expanded deluxe edition. I think one of the first titles in this whole series was the Great Battles of Alexander, but this is the deluxe edition, which added a lot more battles and beefed it up. They also did something similar with, these are heavy, SPQR, which is, this was the Great Battles of History Volume 2, but they kind of did a deluxe version with SPQR as well. There are also several other titles in this series that are, based on different periods of ancient times, and focusing on those battles. Usually numerous battles come in those boxes. I might do a separate video on how this matches up with some of the with those other two titles. I didn't have the Civil Wars, but I did have the Caesar versus Gaul. So I might do a separate video talking about that. But first, let's get into this box. As I said, this is published by GMT Games. GMT was kind enough to send this to me, so I want to thank you for doing that. This is very exciting to get into. The Great Battles of History is, in my opinion, the best ancient tactical series. I've collected and played several ancient tactical games. And there are pros and cons to each one of them. There are some pros and cons to the Great Battles of History, but I really do like this system. I mean, once you understand it and get it down, it translates to most of these other games in the series. Now, each of these have some of their own unique rules. I mean, it is a series, but each of the different offerings, especially the different periods, might have their own unique rules that augment the standard rules that go with the Great Battles of History. But I really do like this series. I like how it treats the different battles, and it really gives you a feel for the history. So let's get into the box here and get in here. So this is the deluxe edition. So as I said, it's bringing on Caesar's Conquest of Gaul, and it's also bringing on the Civil War that took place, two of his major battles. There's also, I think, a series in here in the whole Great Battles history of Caesar and Alexandria that brings in some naval as well, and I don't think they've added that to this. Also, one of the things, there were several expansions to each one of those series, the Civil War and the Gaul, and I don't think they included all those in here. Again, I might do a separate video that talks about what's in, what's out, to the best I know. As I said, I only have the Gaul and some of the expansions to it. So you're going to get a smaller counter sheet here. These are mostly markers. You've got some grappling here, or grappled, so that indicates there's going to be some naval units in here. So there's probably going to be some naval battles. And Great Battles of History does has a whole unit or a whole game on ancient battles or triremes and the like. And so so that's an interesting aspect. It's not a straight translation of how the land system works, but it is somewhat close enough, I guess, that they can keep it in the series. So these are mainly markers, and they're dual-sided, so you get a little smaller counter sheet there. Then we have, several counter sheets. My goodness, there are lots of counter sheets in here. So looks like we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 counter sheets. That's that dark core there, so good quality counters there. And you're going to see these are the leaders. The Roman leaders are usually in white here, and they're double-sided. And there's a lot of numbers on here, so if you're not familiar with the great battles of history, don't get too scared. But there's actually a simplified great battles of history. I played a little bit of that, but I usually try to play the main game. What the simplified does, it takes out some of the, it doesn't use some of the numbers that are on a leader's counter. That's one of the differences of the game, or one of the bigger differences of the game. But you can see there's a lot of numbers there, and these are going to be numbers talking about how the commander can affect combat, but also what their command rating is, and what their command radius is, and if they're the overall commander or line commander. There's a lot to do with command, and that's a very important aspect of ancient war, because the leaders were usually leading the battle, but also when they were trying to command numerous troops, how that command structure broke down or wasn't effective really what turned to the outcome of several of the battles. Then you're going to have, so it looks like we have some notations of what the different units are, or what the different groups there are. Like this is the 12th Legion here. This is the 11th Legion. So you have your different legions, and they're not broken out by the different battles in here. So when you store these, I usually am storing them in baggies by legion when it comes to the Romans, and I put all the leaders together. So when I have to set up a game, I can sort them out that way. Again, dual-sided. The great battles of history uses a cohesion system, where that's how you try to eliminate units or make them retreat, is by knocking out their cohesion, and that's the number on the unit there. Then we have here some triremes, so we have some naval for the naval combat here, and it looks like we're getting into, these are the opponents there. So quite a few different units. And the Romans have this notation on the side. It'd be interesting to see how they break up for the different battles. As I said, I think there's, don't know how many battles are in here. I have to look at the back of the box again, but there are several, so you are getting your money's worth here. Here's Pompey's legions. So these would go with the Civil War that was going on, and here's more Roman legions. And these might be mercenaries over here. Now we're getting into some of the other factions that you'll be fighting against if you're playing the Romans, or you'll be fighting for them if you're fighting against the Romans. And so they're all separated by color. Then their leaders are down here. And you've got some extra long units here. Looks like these are slave units here. That's interesting. So you have, and there's rules for how those move and separately in combat. So here's the Cimbri and the Britons and the Avinti. That'd be part of the Gaul scenario there. So you do have some a notation there of how to keep these together. That's pretty cool. Here's the Germans. So, I mean, if you are interested in the great battles of history and especially Caesar or that time period, this is almost a must-have. And then these are the cohesion markers that you put on to show cohesion hits, and then when it exceeds the cohesion of the unit, then it's going to break or route. And then here's some routing and missile load, keeping track of missile units. And shock, that comes into, and this shock is not just from cavalry. There's actually the way that units attack fit in there. So there's all your counters. So quite a few counters to go in this game, and then there's going to be quite a few of the paper in this game. And this right here might help us sort out what's what. So this, well, goodness gracious, this is the scenario book. I thought they might have separate scenario books based on the games it came from, but this is 80 pages. This is the biggest book I think I've seen of scenarios in any of the great battles of history. So you've got 80 pages here. There's some appendices, and then you all the way up to this last historical battle here. So I'm on page 76 and 77. So 77 pages of scenarios. And as you look in here, you're going to have some of this. There's some like introduction to the scenarios. But then you're going to have a historical background, and I always like that. Again, I play these for the history, so I want to understand what the background is. You're going to have a setup on the map, and then you're going to have your pregame notes, initial deployment. This shows you what the setup is for the units for both sides, and then any special rules that go in with the game, and then victory. So, I mean, these scenarios right here, I think this might be a combination of some scenarios, but this one battle here, it's like 4 pages, so quite a bit of information. And this looks like a huge battle here. So you got your background, your pregame notes, your setup, special rules, and then you have your victory conditions over here. Then you're right into this battle here. So these look like there's going to be some pretty good sized battles. Sometimes you see smaller maps in these games or one mappers. These look like relatively good size battles, and plus a lot of information on them. So huge scenario book there, 80 pages. Then you get the rule book, and this is the deluxe edition. So I wonder if, and so there's going to be some rules that are specific to this time period and to Roman combat that might be a little bit different than what you might find like in the great battles of Alexander. This had some different rules in there, not a ton different. I mean, the general way you play it and the cohesion and the leader and the orders are generally the same, but sometimes they break out a little bit differences. Like in Alexander, I think there's a difference to the order system in some respect, or the command system. So this is it's dual column, color, talking about the different counters, because there's all kinds of different units for this period. Here's your leader counter, and that, of course, explains some of the leader notation, like the rank, command range, elite initiative indicator, name, ID, charisma, or heroic, legion or line command. That's what I was talking about, like that line command. You can command multiple troops there, or a legion, you can command them. Then your initiative. There's kind of the initiative system is very the initiative system is very interesting in that there's kind of a way to press your luck. You can kind of try to hold command or keep on trying to take over command and keep pushing the initiative, or keep pushing the offensive. And it's based on these initiative numbers and rolling against those, and having the other side trying to take it over during time. So that's really kind of an interesting aspect to these games. Then there's some like designer notes, and then a deluxe edition note where they're talking about maybe what's different than what was in the original games that were combined into this one here. Then you've got play notes. So you've got deluxe in brown, play notes in gray, and designer notes in blue so far here. There's a lot of text. Great Battles of History looks a little dense, and it can be a little dense. So, but it's and that's one reason why they have a simple Great Battles of History, because people kind of shy away from it, because it is a complex system and game. Once you get into it and go through it and put some counters on the board and start pushing them around, it starts making sense. And the more you play the game, the more this becomes kind of second nature, and it's not as complicated as it looks, but it does take an investment to get into it. Here's this orders phase that I was telling you about, of how you do the orders. The trump option, that's the part where you can take over the initiative. Caesar's elite command, so there's some different notes here. So then you get into movement. So I'd have to compare this versus the last Great Battles of History that I picked up to see if they've changed anything dramatic. But I wonder if these notes might kick in. Here's like another like a tan note that talks about a historical note. So you've got a tan, a brown, a blue, and a gray. So you got some importance here. This is dealing with shot combat. That's kind of a separate, there is some uniqueness to the shot combat. That's when the two forces are just right next to each other and smashing for a big combat. Advance after combat, cavalry pursuit, special unit formations. So there you have it. There's the rules. You're looking at, oh, here's something about the phalanxes or the double wide units and how they move a little bit different and how you deal with them. And there you have it, 45 pages. There's some credits, and here's some charts and an index. So 45 pages of rules. There's the late Richard Berg. So, you know, quite a bit of rules. I mean, it's half the rules are half the playbook there. Here's the naval rules. So this is separate. So there are some scenarios that have naval combat. I don't know if they're naval and like a landing type situation or if it's a pure naval, but there are some naval rules. And I imagine these track the Great Battles of History naval rules. I can't remember the name of that game right now. I think it is War Galley. That's it. So War Galley is a Great Battles of History. I assume these rules track War Galley in some respect. Maybe these are a little bit more simplified. Not sure. I think War Galley is more rules than 12 pages. So then we get into the maps, and there's going to be lots of maps here. Let's pull all this stuff out here. There's an insert in here, which is probably going to go. These inserts just kind of hold stuff in as you go, or holds it tight for shipping. But once you put, you need to remove the insert basically to get all those counters. You know, this has, you know, with all the counter sheets and putting them in bags. There's not going to be a room for that insert anymore. At least I haven't found that. And then if you want to do a tray, heaven help you. So there's several maps in here. Let's see how many maps are you supposed to get in here. Looks like you're supposed to get 6 22 by 34 back printed maps, 1 11 by 17 back printed map, 4 11 by 17 player aid cards. So looks like there's 7 maps then maybe. So let's take a look at those. Oh, there were some dice there. Yeah, sorry about that. So here's Pharsalus, and these are double printed. So you've got a front and a back. Not a lot of terrain on here. That was one thing about ancient battles. You know, some of the battles were kind of bland, not a lot of terrain. But then again, I mean, that was kind of part of where the units could fight, right? I mean, some of these units were not could not golly, I'm running out of words today, but they couldn't travel over certain types of terrain or fight in certain types of terrain. So a lot of these infantry units, they were so big, and in order to keep command, you had to find terrain that was relatively open, because the more broken the terrain, the more easy to break up your units and to break up your command. And trying to, you know, command a legion over some kind of broken terrain was going to be somewhat haphazard, and you were going to end up losing some of your command. So here's Lutetia. As I say, there's some nice when there is terrain on the map, it's nicely done, and there's like some swamp and stuff up here. But a lot of times there's not a lot on these different maps. So it looks like you're going to get 7 of these maps. This looks like a bigger one of the maps. This looks like a smaller one here. Some of these maps actually have some fortifications on there, as you can see there. So again, I like the maps because the terrain is such that you can, you know, tell what the differences are of the terrain, like if you're going down a slope or something, because it's going to modify terrain or affect your movement or combat, depending on if you're going up or down a slope. And so it's generally, you can tell from the hexes, the terrain fills up the entire hex, so there's no confusion of what kind of terrain you're in. So like this is like high ground with some woods up there. So generally like these maps. And here's quite a bit of terrain here too. So there's the Rhine. So here's there's going to be like a village or a fort on this one. There's some more there. So nice maps. You get 7 of them in here, I believe, and they're double-sided to do all your different combats. I'm not going to lay all these out. I just don't have the room for all that right now. And here, so this might be the one where there's going to be some naval combat here. Well, there's a lot of swamp right there, as you can tell. And that's one of the things when you look at some of these maps, you're like, so this is the bay, so it looks like this might be a all naval combat here. So maybe there's a full naval, and that's just single-sided. Okay. Sometimes you're like looking at those saying, hey, there's no terrain. How come? Why didn't they fight on terrain? Well, they didn't want to fight on terrain because it messed up how they can move their troops around. So here's your player aid 1. Has all your different movement costs with the key here. You've got your Clash of Swords chart. This is consistent with the Great Battles of History that talks about, you know, the type of the defender and the attacker type, and you're going to cross-reference that, and then also where the attack's coming from, whether it's front, flank, or rear, and that's going to affect how you do combat or feeds into combat factors. Shock, superiority chart, shock combat results table. Then you have your missile and fortification effects. So this is basically movement and combat. There's 2 of these player aids, so for each person. Here's player aid 2. Here's your cohesion and TQ check, and that's basically the quality check on the unit. And that, you know, this is the kind of the heart of the combat system or the results of the combat system is TQ and special checks and cohesion. And so this fits right in with that. Then you have your command summary, dealing with the different command structure. Here's the Roman command structure. Here's tribal command structure. Here's Pontic command structure, how they're a little bit different. And how that works out. Here's summary of your orders and legion and line commands here on how you can affect those. And then legion and line command eligibility. So this is basically who can do like a line command, which leaders, and how that works out for the different units that are under a line command and the like. As I said, the combats is based on cohesion. And it's a very interesting combat, and it's relatively consistent throughout. And the command is another huge element of the Great Battles of History because it's simulating what it was like to command a large number of troops in combat during ancient times. You didn't have GPS or even walkie-talkies back then. Stacking charts, so it talks to you a little bit about how stacking is affecting for movement, and then also route movement as well. And there's 2 of those charts, again, one for each side on that. Then you have your player aid card 3, which talks about leadership checks, leadership casualties, as again, leaders, you know, a lot of times led their troops. And so at this time period, they weren't back at HQ, they were in the fray. And so leaders' casualties can happen and do happen. Rally table, die roll of doom. Yeah, I can explain that. It's just a separate rule. I always find that interesting. Elephant rampage. There are elephants at this time period. And here's a sequence of play. So you can have this out to understand what the sequence of play. There's 2 of these cards. Again, 1 for each side, so you can have reference to all your stuff. And then this is basically just a track that you have for your game turn for keeping track of route points. Route points usually is one of the victory conditions in a lot of these scenarios. If you read a certain route point, then the other side has left the building. Elvis has left the building, and the game is over at that point. And so these are like your route point tracks, your game turn tracks, and then you have your, for Jergova, the simple, so this is dealing with the simple Great Battles of History terrain effects. So as I said, the simple Battles of History, they change up some of the command structure, but they also affect, you know, terrain and some other elements of the game. They're trying to simplify it. Still a relatively complex game, even playing the simple Great Battles of History. Then you have the naval charts and tables card. So this is dealing with the rules if you have any of the naval scenarios, dealing with the galleys or the triremes, and dealing with grappling, you know, because it was all about, you know, coming up on a ship and either ramming it and sinking it, or coming up close to it and raking it, and then trying to bring it in closer and then doing combat. They would have Marines on the ships, and that's where a lot of their combat was. Some of the ships might have some fire of some sort, but a lot of it was just trying to get close and engaging and taking them out there. So there's your boarding table, and then there's your missile fire and firefight table. Again, that wasn't as common, or wasn't the main way of taking out the ships. A lot of it was just getting close, ramming and boarding and grappling and having at it with the onboard Marines, or soldiers that were on board, which you might call them Marines. So that is what you get in a box of Great Battles of Julius Caesar. As I said, I might do a separate video talking about, because I think I have Caesar versus Gaul and some of its expansions and modules that went along with that. I might do a separate video kind of comparing those two when I get a chance, now that I've busted this open. A lot of counters there, and a big old thick box. So love to know your thoughts on this. Are you excited about this? If you already had those two games, or did you even come out and get this? I know GMT's doing that a lot now. They did it. They came out with the Musket and Pike that combined two previous games. They've come out with the Battles of the American Revolutionary War and Men of Iron tri-pack. So they've been combining some previous releases into one big pack. I stay away from the Men of Iron tri-pack or multi-pack because I had all the individual ones, so I didn't feel like I need to go get something that had them all combined together. This one only had half of it, but it looks like they changed some stuff up in this one as well. So I'm interested in getting into that aspect. But love to know your thoughts on that, on combining these games, or this game in general, or any of the two games that originally came from this, or the great battles of history in general. Love to know any thoughts on this and what you think about this system or these games. I really like it. To me, it's the best tactical game out there for ancients. However, I mean, it is an investment. You have to take some time to get into it. But there's so much content out there on it, on all the different variety of periods and battles within the ancient period, and actually goes into a little bit of the beginning of the medieval times and some of their offerings as well. So thanks again to GMT Games. I appreciate this, but love to know your thoughts on this. So that's what I have for you today. Thanks for stopping by and taking a peek in this box. I know I went on for a little bit longer time, but there was a lot in this box. So thanks all, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching.